Hi guys, this is my take on cool tone makeup. If you want to see how it's done, please keep on watching. First, I'm going to take this Issy Hydrating Mist and I'm going to spray it all over my face. As you can see, my face is dry and pretty irritated. For the foundation, I'm using Issy in the shade NL 2.5. For the foundation brush, I'm using this 102 Silk Foundation Brush from Zoeva. So the shape of this foundation is dome shaped and it's pretty dense. So it's good at packing on product on the areas that I want to cover. I'm not the type to use very high coverage foundation. And what I like about this is that number one, it's very durable. I've been using this for 7 to 8 years. And number two, it doesn't really leave any kind of streaks on my face, even when I use it to buff. So I'm just tapping in the rest of the foundation on the brush on my forehead. I have bangs, so I don't really need that much coverage there. And the rest I just put in or put on my nose. And I'm gonna use concealer on my nose later, so I don't really need too much foundation there. Time to color correct, I'm using the Izzy in PM3. Hindi ko na maalala bakit ganyan yung mukha ko dyan. Basta Crimson Peak yung pinapanood ko, so may nangyari siguro talaga. I'm placing the color corrector under my eyes, so I'm the type of person who doesn't really mind having dark under eyes or creasy under eyes because they're a part of me, so I have to love them and accept them. And also having dark under eyes is like a look in itself. And I'm also going to place the product on the sides of my nose and on the sides of my mouth. To blend the color corrector, I'm using the 142 Concealer Buffer Brush from Zoeva. Like my foundation brush, I've had this for 7 to 8 years, so it's also very durable. To maximize the coverage of the color corrector, which I think everyone prefers, I tap and blend and buff the product in on the areas that I want to be corrected. So just like what you see in the video. I'm taking the same brush to buff in the color corrector under my eyes. I find that if I do this really well, I don't really need to use a lot of brightening concealer later on. And as I've said a while ago, I have creasy under eyes, so it's better to use less product there. And I'm also buffing in the color corrector on the sides of my eye and onto my lids. I'm using a brown eyeshadow later, so I don't really need that much to correct the lids. And also I'm sorry for the distracting eyelid tape. I didn't have anything else. Moving on to the brows, I'm using the Izzy Brow Trio Pencil. I kind of regret not using a brow powder for this look, really, because the final look screamed soft brows to me. But then again, we live and we learn. One big advantage of having bangs is that you don't need to put that much effort into your brows. But then again, some looks require soft brows and some looks require strong brows. But at the end of the day, I think inherently, or in essence, makeup is self-expression. So whatever makes you feel good, just do it. Let's move on to eyeshadow. I'm taking the Strokes Beauty Neutral Mattes Pro Palette. We're using the 228 Luxe Crease brush from Zoeva. For the base eyeshadow, I'm using the shade Ivory. I'm just loading up the brush here and I'm going to put them on my lids. If you want to blend your eyeshadow really well, you either have to use a setting powder or a base eyeshadow. And as you can see, the color of the base eyeshadow made my lids look cool toned, and that is what we are going for. Next, I'm taking the shade Mink. I'm using the brush JE03. This is from the Vice Jelly Collection version 2. So because I have hooded eyes, I have to pull up my eyes sometimes. And then I have to look straight into the mirror when I put on the eyeshadow. So the second shade serves as my transition shade. And for hooded eyes, it's kind of tricky to have a seamless eyeshadow harmony. So I find that having a transition shade helps with that. The placement of this eyeshadow is onto my crease. So as you can see, I'm just blending it out on my crease and also placing it and blending it out on the sides of my eye because I also want the eyeshadow to shape my eyes in the way that I want them to. Next, we're taking this Sephora brush. It's the 09 Crease brush, and I'm going to use this for the third eyeshadow. The shade that we're taking is the shade Slate on the same palette. So for the third eyeshadow, as you can see, The placement is the same as a second eyeshadow. So I'm just placing it and blending it on the crease. And I'm also placing more on the sides of my eye because that's where I want the shape to take place. It's very important that the placement and the blending of the third eyeshadow is the same as the second eyeshadow. Because if it's not, the two eyeshadow colors will look muddy and it will not look blended. And we don't want that for our eyeshadow, especially when you have hooded eyes. I'm also taking the brush on the outer thirds of my eye, particularly on the lash line, because I want this to be a smoky look. I think a smoky eye suits hooded eyes really well. So since my upper eyelid space covers most of the eyeshadow, I can explore other areas where I can put color. And for me, it's either the sides of my eye and or the lower lash line. So now is a problem area for me, or a challenging area, I would say. Since I have a fold, right, that covers some part of my eyelid, I have to pack in more product there so that when I blink my eyes or when I close my eyes, the eyeshadow would be seamless and it wouldn't be that patchy. So this is the area where I have to pack in more eyeshadow so that the eyeshadow looks blended. I probably shouldn't be tugging my eyes as hard as this though. So here I'm just looking straight into the camera and straight into the mirror to see if the eyeshadows match on both eyes. Next, I'm taking this 231 Luxe Petite Crease Brush from Zoeva. So this can add more precision and more accuracy on the eyeshadow. And I'm taking a darker eyeshadow in the shade Carbon on the same palette. So for this darker eyeshadow, I'm just going to place that on the outer part of my lower lash line and extending that on the outer thirds of my eye. So as you can see, it serves as an eyeliner to lift the eye a little bit more. So I'm adding in more product to define my eye a little bit more. So apart from my eyes being hooded, my eyelids are also a little bit fat. So if you look closely, yung lash line that connects to the lid, it's a little bit fat. So it's curved, it's not flat. So I probably should have used a smaller eyeshadow brush or like a smaller brush to pack in color there, but I kind of forgot. Ayan, tapos yan, tinulak na si ate dun sa pinapanood ko shit. So ganyan itsura ko. I love horror, by the way. And I just continue blending the eyeshadow after that shocking scene. And just blend, blend, blend until I'm satisfied with the way that it looks. So here I'm just lifting my eye for a bit and I'm packing on color by blending and tapping the eyeshadow on the parts where it looks unblended because I want it to look as blended as possible so I feel satisfied with the way that it looks. Looking at this video now because I'm editing, I feel that I should have hydrated my skin a little bit better before I did my makeup so that when I packed in or when I put in some powder on my face and my eye, it wouldn't be as difficult to blend. Or maybe I should have used an eye primer. So if you have dry skin, please hydrate well and prime your face. So now we're moving on to blush. This is a Strokes Crush Blush in Ladylike. This will not be the primary or the main blush, but I am using it as a way to brighten the center of my face, or more specifically, the sides of my nose. So how I use this is that I take the product on my finger and then I warm it on the back of my hand. And this is where I place it, just to brighten that part of my face. Up next is contour. I'm taking the Issey stick in the shade Snatch. And the brush that we're using is the Real Techniques sculpting brush. So for contour on the left side of my face, I just place it here and on the natural areas where I have shadow. So for the right side of my face, the contour is a little bit different. So I place the contour on a wider area on the right side of my face because it's fuller than the left one. I don't have a symmetrical face, and I think that's fine because regular people don't really have symmetrical faces, and that's okay. So sometimes the contour on my left side matches the one on my right, and sometimes they don't match. And if they don't match, I think that's okay. So one thing that I have to remember is that when I do my contour, I also have to look straight into the mirror. So here I'm just taking the foundation brush earlier, and I'm just using that to blend out the contour so it doesn't look that harsh. Next, I'm taking this old concealer from Issey. This is in the shade YF1. I'm putting it on the back of my hand. And then I'm taking this brush. This is the JE03 in the first Vice Jelly collection. So here I'm just priming the brush. This is a technique that I learned from a very good makeup artist named Katie Jane Hughes. If you don't follow her, please do. You're gonna learn a lot from her. So I'm placing the concealer very lightly on the areas of my nose that I want to forward. So that's on the bridge of my nose, just in between the brows, right there. And this part, I don't know what that's called, but that part, and also on the tip of my nose. Next, we're going to use this Strokes Black Gel Eyeliner. I like this eyeliner on me because it's really creamy. But then since I have very sensitive eyes, and I forgot to use a Q-tip to dry my lash line, right? Don't forget to do that. So this one bleeds on me after a few hours. Also, it helps if you sharpen your eyeliner before this. I forget that. I forget to do that every time. Next, we're using the JE06 brush from the first Vice Jelly collection. And then I'm taking the shade Carbon again. And then I'm going to take the excess off on the back of my hand, and I'm going to use that to outline the lower outer thirds of my eye, just to define that a little bit. And also using that as a little bit of an eyeliner, just to define the eye a little bit more. So when I use an eyeshadow or a powder as an eyeliner, I like to map out the line first. This brush is really soft and also really good for this. And then after mapping out the line that I want, I then tap in the product to define the line a little bit better. So I'm just checking here to see if it looks good. Next is the Pretty Fresh palette from the second Vice Jelly collection. Here we're going to use the Mochi blush. I think this shade is really good. I think it suits a lot of skin tones. And we're going to use the Vice Jelly JE01 brush that comes with it. So I place this on the highest points of my cheeks. I think this is the highest point of my cheeks. So I don't want it on the center of my face or on the apples of my cheek. So just there. So for this one, I just blend. Next, I'm taking this 223 Petite Eye Blender. I'm not going to use this for the eyes. I usually or mostly use this for my nose contour. I think the size and the shape suits my nose really well. So first I carve out this part of my nose. So this is where I base the width of my nose. And then I go to the tip, and then the width of the tip of my nose should match, not exactly, but then should match the width that I place on the first step of my nose contour, if that makes any sense. I don't know if you notice, but if you see the marks on the sides of my nose, those are from my glasses because I have quite the poor eyesight. That's why I use contact lenses on most of my videos. I forget to conceal those marks on my nose, but then usually I just don't care. So I use my fingers and use the warmth of my fingers to blend the contour, and then add a little bit more product if I need them. And then after that, I use the foundation brush to just blend everything. Okay, so up next is my favorite part. So I'm taking the color corrector that we used earlier, right, on my under eyes and on the dark areas of my face. And then next, I'm mixing that with the light concealer that we used on my nose. So I'm just mixing that on the back of my hand. I'm taking the JE03 brush to place the concoction that we mixed earlier. For the placement, I put this on the sides of the nose contour, right there, and I'm careful not to erase the eyeshadow on the lower lash line. And I also take it up there on the space between the eyes and the nose bridge. So I blend this out with another brush. This is the Real Techniques Kitten Paw brush, and I like this brush because it's very soft, and also it blends out the concealer quite well so that you can have a lifted look, if that is what you're going for. We're using another Vice Jelly brush from the first collection. This is the JE05. I'm taking this contour powder from Issy in the shade Storm. So I'm just packing in the product on the brush, loading it up, and then tapping off the excess, and then lightly putting the powder on the cream contour on our nose. If you have any advice on how I can improve my nose contour or any other makeup things that you saw here, please let me know. So going back to the powder contour, I'm putting it on this place so it can blend seamlessly on the nose contour and on the eyeshadow. For powder blush, I'm using the JE10 brush from the second Vice Jelly collection. I like this brush because you can use it for subtle placement and you can also use it to build up the powder blush. The shade that I'm using is from Issy in the shade Aroused. I really like this on my skin. So I'm placing this on where we put the cream blush earlier. So that's on the high points of my cheeks and a little bit on the sides that can blend into the contour. And I'm also putting the blush on the tip of my nose and on this part of my nose, just right there, and on the temples, as well as my chin area. I find that if I do this, it makes the look more cohesive. We're not done with the eyes yet, so I'm taking this Strokes eye brush in number 12, and I'm taking this white eyeshadow. This is from Issy. I'm mixing that with the ivory shade that we used earlier in the Strokes Mattes palette. And I'm putting that mix on the inner corners of my eyes. So this acts as like a matte highlighter. I know that's all the rage right now, and I don't have one. So I'm just using eyeshadow. Next, we're going to curl our lashes. This is the Shu Uemura. I've had this since 2016, and I need to buy the new rubber thingies. So when I curl my lashes, I have a compact mirror and then I look down. And then I curl my lashes in different angles because my lashes are pretty stubborn. I'm not going to use mascara for this look, but if you want to, please go ahead. Instead, I'm going to use the fake lashes, cluster lashes from Fabulash and Jelly collection. I think everyone needs to try this because I think it suits every eye shape. I did the lashes off cam, and now we're moving on to the lips. This is the Issy Satin Bullet Lipstick in the shade Deco. I believe they describe this as vintage brown. I couldn't find a very cool tone brown. I wanted to try the viral Alone Time MAC lipstick, but then it's expensive and also it's out of stock. Next, we're contouring the lips using the JE06 brush from the second Vice Jelly collection. I'm taking the Strokes Chiseled Contour Palette and I'm taking the shade Spanish Latte. And I learned this from Jelly that you can use powder for contour. And I'm just carving out my lips, as you can see. And then I'm taking this Avon Bullet Lipstick in the shade Blush Nude. And I'm putting that on the center of my lips, just like that. For lip gloss, I'm using the Issy Fat Gloss in the shade Rude. And I just apply that all over my lips. I wish I could have had a paler lip so that the color of this lip gloss could translate into the camera, but no. So next I'm taking this pencil brush, I would say, from Maange. I hope I said that right. And I'm taking the earlier contour powder from Strokes that we used on my nose earlier, and I'm putting that on the outer corners of my lips. So I'm doing this because I wanted to have a similarity between the contrast of my eyes and my lips. Because as you can see here, the outer thirds of my eyes are of high contrast, and I wanted to have the same kind of vibe on my lips. I probably should have done this before I put on the lip products, but here we are. Moving on to highlighter, I'm using the Strokes palette, Blush and Flash palette, and I'm using the shade Obsession. And I'm using this very old brush that I got from my friend since 2016, and I'm putting it over here on my nose. Next, we're using a fixing spray. So for this one, I didn't know that this was a fixing spray, so I didn't use a setting spray. But then it held up my makeup pretty well, maybe because I have dry skin. I really don't like fragrant products because my face is sensitive and I'm eczema prone, but this one works well on my skin. And then I'm just using a fan to dry out the spray on my face. So the last step of this makeup look is taking this Absidy Complexion Blur Powder in Petal. I really love this product because it blurs out the center of my face and it also brightens it. And I'm using the brush from Real Techniques. This is their setting powder. And I'm just placing that powder on the center of my face. I don't know why, but in most of the makeup looks that I do, I want the center of my face to be bright and blurred because it looks like a filter when I do that. So this is the final look. I'm just adjusting the reflector here. And this is my take on a cool toned makeup on a neutral, warm skin. And this is a close-up of the look. Thank you so much for reaching this part of the video. Thank you for spending your time with me. I hope you have a great day and I hope you're happy, and I'll see you again. Bye!